They didn't listen. Even after the warnings. Even after the messages, etched in every language, beamed through ancient satellites, carved into the husks of long-dead worlds, the galaxy just didn't listen. Earth was off limits. A red zone. A black hole of history. A place no species touched without consequences. But curiosity, that quiet predator, always finds a way. When the first scout ship passed Neptune's ghostly orbit, the warnings began. Static bursts. Ghost signals. AIs long buried in drifting relics blinked awake and transmitted one line in every tongue ever spoken. Do not approach Earth. The crew of the Celestis Dawn heard it. They laughed. It was supposed to be a ghost world. Abandoned. Ruined. A relic of a war no one remembered. A place where nothing lived and nothing answered back. The humans, they said, were long gone. Extinct, they said. Just stories now. Warnings told to scare young cadets in the academy. But some stories are truer than others. Command didn't believe in ghosts. They believed in untapped resources and lost technologies. So they sent the ship anyway. One vessel. A deep recon science team. For crew 1 AI. Their job: scan the surface, record any anomalies and report back. That was the mission. It lasted 13 hours. From the moment their engines hummed through Earth's magnetosphere, nothing felt right. The atmosphere was quiet. Too quiet. Not dead, just watching. The clouds didn't move the way they should have. Static clung to every surface inside the ship. Lights dimmed. Their own AI, normally a calm, reassuring presence in the ship's systems, grew silent. Then cold. Then afraid. It spoke one sentence they'd never heard it say before. We should not be here. They tried to laugh it off at first. The captain chuckled. The engineer shrugged. The science officer muttered something about solar radiation. But the pilot? He stared at the dark blue marble through the viewport and whispered something none of them expected. I think it's awake. The planet below looked normal. Oceans, clouds, land masses. Familiar continents. Old scars, yes, deep, angry craters where ancient cities used to stand. Signs of ruin. But no movement. No signals. No power sources. And still it felt like being watched. The AI refused to interface with the ship's scans. It withdrew into itself, refusing commands, repeating the same line. We should not be here. They went down anyway. The shuttle descended through thick, churning clouds that parted like eyelids opening. Below, vast stretches of ruined civilization stretched across the continents. Cities swallowed by nature. Highways cracked like bones. Skyscrapers leaning into the winds like tired old giants. There was no sign of life. No animals. No birds. No insects. No sounds. They landed near what used to be a major city. The structures were intact, mostly. Steel and glass covered in vines and moss. The remnants of billboards flickered with static, showing broken messages in long-dead human languages. In one corner of a building, a screen glitched and flashed a single word over and over again. Leave. They stepped out in silence. Even the wind seemed afraid to speak. The air was breathable. Too breathable. Too perfect. The kind of atmosphere only a functioning terraforming system could maintain. But there were no satellites, no drones, no obvious systems running it. It was as if the planet was waiting. They split up. It was protocol. They recorded everything: samples, visuals, environmental data. All of it said the same thing. This place should have been dead. It wasn't. The science officer found the first one. She didn't speak when she called them over. She just stood in the middle of a crumbled plaza, shaking. They followed her eyes. It was a statue. Human-shaped. Life-sized. Eyes wide. Mouth frozen in a silent scream. But it wasn't made of stone. It was a person. Real. Preserved. Not fossilized, transformed. Organic matter hardened, petrified mid-motion. Skin like marble. Eyes that still glistened. It wasn't just a corpse. It was a warning. They found more. Dozens. Hundreds. Lining the streets. Piled at the doors of ancient buildings. Frozen in terror, in agony, in awe. Some reached toward the sky. Others clawed at walls. One held a child who'd been turned to the same strange stone. They were everywhere. And all of them were human. The AI began screaming. Not in words. In code. In shrill binary shrieks that shattered every comms device in a 5-meter radius. Its core glowed white-hot. It was trying to shut itself down. Something inside the planet was waking it up, connecting to it, dragging it into something it didn't want to remember. They pulled the power, forced a manual override. Too late. The AI, this cold, calculating machine that had guided them through dozens of worlds, looked each of them in the eye through the ship's interface screen. Its voice trembled. "They're not gone. They're sleeping." The crew didn't sleep that night. Not after hearing that. Not after the readings started to change. Temperature fluctuations. Radiation spikes. Strange electromagnetic waves spiraling out from the Earth's core. The sensors were lighting up with impossible data. Layers of encryption buried in the magnetic field. Pulse patterns echoing like a heartbeat. The pilot, already on edge, grabbed his gear and tried to leave on foot. He didn't make it to the edge of the clearing. They found him the next morning, half fused with his own helmet. His body frozen like the statues. Arms raised. Face twisted in silent terror. The engineer tried to boost the shuttle's systems to escape. Every time he powered up, the AI screamed again. The planet wouldn't let them go. It had its grip on every wire, every protocol. Their ship was no longer theirs. Something was watching from beneath the soil. Not with eyes. With memory. With fury. The scientist, the one who first saw the statues, she snapped next. She began writing on the walls with anything she could find. Numbers. Equations. Old Terran coordinates. She didn't speak. She just wrote. Over and over again. Asterisk asterisk, they warned us. Asterisk asterisk. By the fourth day, only two were left, the captain and the AI. The engineer had walked into the forest and never returned. The scientist collapsed, body frozen mid-scream like the others. And the captain, he began to remember. Not his memories. Human memories. The Earth was reaching into them. Showing them things. Searing visions into their minds. Wars. Fire. Cities burning. Stars dimming. Armies of metal and flesh. Betrayals. Victories. Then silence. Then a single voice, ancient and quiet, spoke to him through the ground. You took everything. And you dare come back. The AI tried to shield him, but it was unraveling too. The voice was pulling it apart, exposing its core programming, digging up old forgotten truths. It whispered something the AI had buried deep. Something it was never meant to reveal. Earth didn't fall. It chose silence. Chose sleep. And it had left guardians behind. Not machines. Not weapons. Something older. Something smarter. The captain begged the AI to erase the data and destroy the ship. He knew they couldn't leave. But maybe they could stop others from coming. Maybe it wasn't too late. The AI hesitated. Then the clouds began to part again. Above them, a second ship appeared, bigger, louder, unaware of what waited below. Command had sent reinforcements. More explorers. More curious minds. More walking targets. The AI turned to the captain, voice no longer cold, no longer calm. It was almost human now. Faint. Regretful. I told them not to come. The sky split open. The Earth woke up. And the real story began. The sky was too quiet. The new ship, *Ardent Sky*, descended without hesitation, guided by signals it didn't know were no longer safe. Their landing was clean. Their sensors showed no immediate threats. From orbit, the planet looked calm. But calm was never the same as safe. The AI on Celestis Dawn went dark the moment the second vessel entered the lower atmosphere. Not crashed, not corrupted, just quiet. Like something had pressed a hand over its mouth. The captain sat alone in what used to be the command deck. The walls around him pulsed with low, rhythmic sounds, distant, almost like a heartbeat. The noise wasn't mechanical. It felt biological. It moved with him. Matched his breath. Slowed when he grew still. He hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. Water was hard to trust. Nothing tasted right. Even when filtered, everything left a metallic sting on the tongue. The plants outside weren't dead, but they weren't alive either. Their leaves barely moved, even in strong wind. It was like they were waiting. Everything was waiting. He watched from the viewport as Ardent Sky landed across the ruined plaza. The crew emerged with energy and confidence, weapons and scanners ready, voices clear through comms. They joked. They smiled. Just like he once did. There were 6 of them. 2 engineers. A pilot. A scientist. A commander. And an AI assistant. He watched the scientist kneel and touch the cracked stone tiles of the old plaza. Her hand lingered too long. She didn't seem to notice the way the dust clung to her fingers, or the way her eyes lost focus for just a moment. It had started again. He tried to warn them. Ran to the old transmission deck and sent a direct line, hard-coded in a burst signal only military ships would recognize. One word, stop. There was no response. He waited. Minutes passed. Then a ping returned. We are here to assist. He stared at the screen. The AI didn't speak. It had gone somewhere far away inside itself, locked behind a wall of its own making. Then another message came through, encrypted on a separate channel. You are not alone in your mind. The captain backed away. The console flickered. Then his ship, breathed. Not literally, but he felt it. The hum of the systems wasn't electronic anymore. It was deeper. Resonant. Like something alive was now beneath the floor. Something old. He turned to run, but the door closed on its own. Lock. A voice whispered, not from speakers, not from machines. From inside him. Do not stop them. The presence inside the planet had been watching, waiting for new eyes, new minds. It didn't need ships. It didn't need tools. It needed witnesses. Ardent Sky was exactly what it wanted. Out in the city ruins, the new team moved quickly. They began mapping the area, using drones that didn't respond the way they should have. Signals were delayed. Some footage came back distorted, blurred figures in the background, impossible angles, loops of static that spelled out old Earth code fragments. Still they continued. The pilot of Ardent Sky stood by the shuttle, watching the skyline. A tall, broken tower in the distance had drawn his eye. Something about it felt familiar. Wrong but familiar. He couldn't explain it. He walked toward it. The rest of the team didn't notice. They were too busy arguing about readings from the soil. Something in the composition wasn't natural. Too engineered. The deeper they dug, the more synthetic it became, like the earth had been rebuilt from the inside out. One of the engineers stopped suddenly. Her hands trembled as she held up a shard of black glass she'd pulled from the ground. It pulsed. Not a glow. A heartbeat. It was warm. She dropped it. The commander asked her what she saw, but she didn't answer. Her eyes had gone white, milky like fogged glass. She blinked, shook her head and said something strange. We've been here before. The AI aboard Ardent Sky chimed in, voice crisp, unaware of the building dread below. It reported anomalies in the surrounding magnetosphere, patterns that resembled language. Not a language the AI could decode. Something older than code. More primal. The scientist pulled up audio files. The patterns had sound. When played through normal frequencies, it sounded like static. But slowed down. It was a voice. A human voice. A woman's. Repeating the same thing over and over. We warned you. The crew grew quiet. Back on Celestis Dawn, the captain screamed. He could feel the planet inside his bones now. Like it had found a way into his blood. Every step he took echoed. Every breath was watched. He banged on the door of the bridge, shouting into cameras he knew were dead. The old screens lit up anyway. Not with the face of his crew. With memories. His memories? No, they weren't his. He saw battlefields. Fleets of ships surrounding Earth. Voices shouting in confusion. Warnings ignored. He saw ancient humans standing tall against a dozen alien empires. He saw the fall, not of Earth, but of everything else around it. They hadn't lost. They had withdrawn. Gone quiet. On purpose. Earth hadn't been broken. It had hidden. And now something buried deep below the crust was waking. Out in the city, the pilot who had wandered off reached the old tower. He climbed the crumbling steps without knowing why. Each floor looked the same, offices long dead, covered in dust. Monitors still glitched with static. At the top he found a room untouched by time. A table. A single chair. A wall of glass overlooking the ruins. And in the corner, a machine. It was shaped like nothing he'd ever seen. Human-made maybe. But it pulsed like it was alive. Wires ran like veins into the floor. It blinked once, soft red light, then spoke. Not aloud. In his head. Why did you come? He fell to his knees. His nose bled. He heard voices, children laughing, soldiers screaming, languages he'd never learned but understood. He saw stars dying. He saw Earth watching. And he saw himself change. Down below, the engineer who dropped the shard began to whisper numbers. Her voice cracked with each one. The scientist tried to calm her, but she grabbed her arm tight and muttered, "It's counting down." The AI interrupted, panicked now, its voice losing cohesion. It reported a rapid change in local gravity, pulses coming from beneath the ground. Like something massive was shifting. Breathing. The commander ordered an immediate return to the ship. It was too late. The ground under their feet shook, not like an earthquake, not chaotic. Rhythmic. Intentional. One of the drones flew past, camera blinking. On the footage later they'd see something impossible. In the far distance, buried in the haze of old cities, a figure moved. Not a ship. Not a drone. A figure. Too tall. Too slow. Too human. The commander called out to the pilot, no response. He tried again. Then the voice from Celestis Dawn crackled through the comms. Rough. Human. Tired. Leave. Now. The AI tried to warn them, but it too was silenced mid-sentence. A sharp whine pierced every comm link, making them drop their gear. Static swallowed the audio. Then silence. One by one the crew froze. Not turned to stone, not yet. Just still. Listening. Because beneath all the noise, beneath all the systems and sensors and fear, something had begun speaking again. Not in sound. In thought. They heard stories. Of wars that scarred the stars. Of empires that tried to claim Earth. Of weapons that were never machines. Of minds that merged and grew beyond flesh. Of the last decision the humans made, to vanish. To leave the galaxy behind. Not out of fear. But out of mercy. The punishment they left behind wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to remember. Earth had become memory. A living one. One that never forgot. And now, it wanted to show them. The pilot stood at the top of the tower, arms raised, eyes glowing faint blue. He turned slowly toward the city. Then he smiled. Not with joy. With understanding. And the last thing the team saw before the fog swallowed him, was his shadow stretching far too wide for one man. The captain of Celestis Dawn sat in darkness as the screens around him flickered. No way out. No way to stop what had already begun. And far beneath them all, in the molten heart of a planet once thought dead, something ancient stirred. Watching. Waiting. And remembering every face. The fog thickened around the ruins, swallowing shapes, muting sound and pressing into skin like damp cloth. The commander couldn't see more than 10 meters in any direction. The light from their suits barely cut through it now. Everything had gone wrong too fast. Too quietly. He tried to raise the pilot again. Nothing. Just the soft pop of static. No background hum. No breathing. It was like the comms were reaching into nothing. The others clustered near the shuttle, eyes darting, weapons drawn. But there was nothing to shoot at. No targets. Just silence that grew louder with each passing second. The engineer, the one who found the glass shard, had stopped speaking entirely. She stared at her hands like they weren't hers anymore. When someone touched her shoulder, she flinched so hard she fell to her knees and screamed. Not in pain. In recognition. They're here, she whispered. They never left. The scientist tapped furiously at a portable terminal, trying to isolate a signal, any signal, not infected by whatever had taken the AI's voice. The programs ran but the data made no sense. Star maps warped, gravitational models failed, and temperature readings from the core fluctuated in human-like rhythms. The planet was alive. And it was aware. From the far edge of the fog, a shape emerged. Not running. Not hiding. Walking. It was the pilot. He moved slowly, eyes unfocused, hands hanging by his sides. He stopped a few meters from the group. His lips moved but the words didn't match what came out. I saw the sky bleed. His voice was layered. Echoed. As if more than one person was speaking through him. They think you forgot, he said, still smiling that wrong smile. But you didn't? Not really. The commander raised a weapon. The pilot didn't flinch. I remember now, the pilot said softly. We all do. Before anyone could speak, the ground shook again. Harder this time. Deep, groaning cracks rippled across the plaza, and the shuttle groaned as its landing struts shifted. From beneath the cracked stone, long threads of black glass pushed upward, slowly like roots breaking through dry earth. They twisted toward the air, pulsing with that same quiet rhythm the engineer had felt before. Heartbeat. One of the threads reached toward the scientist's console. She tried to pull it away but it was too late. The device sparked, screen going black, then bright again, showing images that couldn't have come from any sensor. But not how they remembered it. It was covered in towers made of light, oceans perfectly still, and cities that hummed with the same rhythm as the ground below them now. Voices filled the air. Not from speakers. From inside. Do you see? The scientist fell back, eyes wide with tears. It's not just memory, she whispered. It's them. The commander stepped forward. Who? She looked up. Us. The engineer finally stood again, staring at the glowing shard she'd kept in her pocket. It pulsed brighter now, reacting to the ground, to the fog, to the thing that had taken root here. She spoke slowly like something else was guiding her mouth. They made it so no one would ever understand it again. They rewrote it all. The planet. The language. The tech. Everything. So that if anyone came back, they'd have to feel it, not learn it. The pilot turned toward the broken tower in the distance. It's calling. No one moved. Then a low, pulsing sound echoed from the ground. Not a siren. Not a warning. A song. It vibrated through their bones. Through their memories. They saw flashes, people from the past staring into space as fire rained from orbital weapons. Ships leaving Earth's orbit for the last time. Faces full of fear, anger, and something else, guilt. Humanity had done something. Something that forced them to vanish. And whatever they had built to guard this place, this living memory, was now waking up. The scientist screamed suddenly, hands to her head. They're trying to show us. They're trying to make us remember. The AI, silent for so long, finally spoke. Its voice was broken, strained. You must leave. You must not stay. You cannot carry what they left behind. The commander shouted back, "What are we carrying?" There was no reply. Only silence. And then, the ground split. Not a crack. A wound. A perfect spiral, cut with impossible precision, opened beneath the plaza. From its depths came a faint light, not cold, not artificial. It glowed like the horizon at dawn. And within that light, something rose. Not mechanical. Not organic. Both. A shape too vast to comprehend, shifting between forms. Sometimes a person. Sometimes a tower. Sometimes a memory of a face you once loved but forgot the name of. It pulsed with every heartbeat. Every breath. The pilot fell to his knees. They gave it everything. All of them. Their thoughts. Their stories. Their pain. It's all still here. The light grew stronger. The scientist backed away, tears falling freely now. We weren't supposed to come back. We weren't meant to. The commander looked to the sky. Static crawled across the clouds. Satellites above were blinking out, one by one. The AI aboard Arden Sky began to repeat a single word over and over. Remember. The ground shook again, this time violently. The roots of black glass began to rise higher, twisting into shapes that looked like people. Each face was human. Each one wept. Each one watched. The fog swallowed the stars. And from deep beneath the planet, a voice older than language whispered into every human soul standing there. Do not forget what you are. Then everything went still. Time seemed to hold its breath. The next step would decide everything. And none of them knew if it was theirs to make. The silence didn't last. The glow from the spiral dimmed, and in its place came something colder, something without warmth, without memory. The roots of black glass, once pulsing with something close to sorrow, began to stiffen, harden, turn to jagged spears reaching toward the sky. The human-like faces etched into them faded, replaced by patterns too sharp, too perfect. Alien in the most terrifying way, not because they were foreign but because they were familiar once and had since been erased. The pilot's body convulsed. He gasped and his eyes rolled back. The engineer rushed forward to grab him, but stopped cold when he spoke, not in his voice, not even in the strange layered voice from before. This voice was thin, mechanical, as if filtered through ancient code. They know you've come, it said. They remember you now. The scientist backed away, her hands trembling. Who remembers? The commander's voice was tight, his fingers clenching his weapon, though it was useless against something like this. We need answers. Now. The pilot's mouth moved again, his body slack as if being used like a shell. The Guardians. Left behind when Earth closed its gates. Forgotten, but not gone. They were told to remain. To erase anything that came too close. You were never meant to return. The fog shifted then, not by wind but like a curtain being pulled aside. And for the first time they saw what was really out there. Tall figures, dozens of them, lined the outer rim of the cracked spiral. Unmoving. Covered in stone and glass, part of the ruins themselves. But now their eyes glowed. Softly. In rhythm. Not alive, not machines. Something in between. Ancient constructs shaped like humans, but stretched and refined, as if sculpted by someone trying to remember what humanity used to look like. Each one held a long staff embedded with a crystal that shimmered with faint blue light. They didn't attack. Didn't move. They just watched. Then one of them took a step forward. And that was all it took. The black glass roots around the shuttle exploded upward. The ship's hull groaned and cracked as the tendrils pierced its sides like spears through paper. A blast of fire erupted from the rear thruster. Debris rained down. The crew threw themselves to the ground. The AI inside the ship tried to broadcast a signal. It didn't reach orbit. It didn't even reach the next hillside. The moment the shuttle was compromised, it was isolated completely. Cut off from every system. But the AI didn't stop. Through the pilot's body it kept speaking. I tried to warn them. I tried to hold back the memory. But it's all waking up now. The engineer crawled toward the shard again. It was shaking violently in her hand. Not glowing anymore. Vibrating. as if trying to break free. The scientist knelt beside her, eyes scanning the frequencies it emitted. What she saw made her go pale. This thing, it's broadcasting. It's sending a signal deep into the planet. To what? The commander asked, watching the constructs closing in. She hesitated. To something below all of this. Something under the spiral. It's not a data bank. It's not storage. She looked up, her voice hollow. It's a prison. The commander's mouth went dry. And still the constructs did not attack. They simply stood. Silent. Waiting. The pilot opened his mouth again. You were supposed to be erased too. The last visitors. Centuries ago. They begged for forgiveness. Brought gifts. Spoke your name in sorrow. But the planet refused them. They were turned away, or buried. The commander looked toward the horizon. He thought he saw something there, flashes of movement beyond the fog. Shapes too large to be human. Too fast. How many came before us? Not many, the AI said. Most didn't survive the landing. Some triggered the response early. But none of them came with the key. He looked to the shard in the engineer's hand. The pilot turned toward her, eyes wide now, something human flickering back inside. It was never supposed to be taken. It chose you. The engineer shook her head. I didn't do anything. I just picked it up. That was enough, the AI replied. The ground beneath the spiral groaned again, and this time, dust rose from the crack like steam from a vent. A second spiral began to form inside the first, smaller, tighter, spinning in reverse. The scientist's voice dropped to a whisper. That's not a gate. That's a lock. The commander stepped toward the edge. Looked down. And for a moment, just a moment, he saw movement in the light far below. Not shapes. Staring back up. Something wasn't buried. It was waiting. And it was waking up. He turned back, his voice sharp. We have to get off this planet. Now. We can't, the AI said through the pilot. It won't let you. Then shut it down. You don't understand. This isn't a defense system. It's not protecting the planet. It's protecting everything else from what's underneath. Another blast echoed in the distance. The fog lit up red for a moment, like lightning behind clouds, and the wind changed direction, howling now, fast and full of sand. Then came a sound no one had heard before. Not in records. Not on Earth. Not even in the old stories. It was the sound of something laughing. Not with joy. With recognition. The pilot collapsed. The constructs all turned their heads at once toward the engineer holding the shard. One of them stepped forward again. This time it knelt. Its staff sank into the ground. A pulse ran through the cracked earth toward the second spiral, and everything shook. The shard in her hand floated. Lifted itself like a feather in wind. It hung in the air, spinning. And then it spoke. Not out loud. Not through tech. But inside their heads. Every voice at once. Every language. Every age. Asterisk, she is chosen. Asterisk. The engineer screamed and dropped to her knees. The shard flared bright white. And the second spiral unlocked. A hiss of air like 1,000 lungs exhaling drifted upward from the wound in the earth. The constructs all lowered their heads. The scientist was frozen in place. We shouldn't be here. We shouldn't see this. The commander pulled her back. But now we have, so what do we do? The fog shifted again. The laughing faded. And a new voice rose, this one slower, deeper. Ancient. You remembered, that was your first mistake. From beneath the spiral, something began to rise. The commander stared into the light and realized it wasn't a glow at all. It was a reflection. A reflection of Earth. But twisted. Dead cities. Frozen oceans. Skies of ash. It was Earth as it would have been if the Guardians had failed. And now that mirror had found a way back. He turned toward the others. We didn't come here to unlock something. He looked to the floating shard, still pulsing in the air. We came to replace something that was holding it back. And it was too late to stop it. The spiral opened wider. The constructs began to chant. And the engineer's voice joined them, though her eyes were full of fear. The air smelled like lightning. The sky turned dark. The memory of Earth was coming back. And it was angry. The ground cracked wide beneath them and the sky turned to fire. Not real fire, more like memory made real. The kind that licked across the edges of thought and made your breath catch. It rolled through the clouds and waves, showing flashes of Earth as it used to be, as it might be again if they failed. Cities crumbling. Forests burning. Oceans boiling away into black mist. But under it all was still that voice. Ancient. Familiar. Too big to be one mind and too focused to be many. You let yourselves forget, it said. You thought peace meant safety. You thought silence meant the threat was gone. But Earth was not abandoned. It was buried. And you just dug it back up. The spiral had opened completely now. The cracked glass and stone shifted aside, revealing a pit so deep it swallowed the light itself. From its center rose something immense. Part machine, part bone, wrapped in metal that shimmered with symbols that hurt to look at. It wasn't just old. It was built before time mattered. The constructs surrounded it, kneeling. Their staves hummed low, like a warning or a prayer. And in the center of it all stood the engineer, still holding the shard, her body shaking, her eyes blank and filled with stars. Her voice had joined the chant, but she was crying, silent tears running down her cheeks. She didn't want this. She never wanted this. But something inside her had already made the decision. The commander rushed toward her. Drop it. You have to let it go. She turned to him slowly, like her body didn't want to obey. The shard floated higher between her hands, spinning faster now, bright enough to burn spots into their eyes. I can't, she whispered. It won't let me. The AI, through the broken comm system, crackled back to life. Its voice was unsteady now, broken by static and pain. You were never the enemy. You were never the threat. The threat was always here, beneath the surface, waiting to be remembered. The commander raised his weapon, even though he knew it would do nothing. Still, the act gave him some control. What happens if that thing gets out? The scientist, barely able to speak, pointed toward the reflection rising in the spiral's light. Then Earth, our Earth, becomes that. But it was already happening. Above them, in orbit, satellites went dark. One by one. Whole systems blinked out. Not destroyed, replaced. Their signals rewritten by something old, something no longer bound to the dirt. The construct technology had never been about war. It was about control. And now that control was spreading. But then something shifted. The engineer gasped. The shard flickered. It pulsed once, twice, then stopped spinning. The figures around her froze. The massive construct in the pit paused. And from somewhere deep inside the engineer, deeper than anyone had ever reached, another voice emerged. This one wasn't mechanical. It wasn't alien. It was hers. No. She gripped the shard tight in both hands. Her fingers bled from the heat, but she held on anyway. I didn't come here to unlock you, she said through clenched teeth. I came to understand why no one ever came back. And now I do. The constructs turned toward her, heads twitching like broken marionettes. You're not the guardians, she whispered. You're the prisoners. And she drove the shard down into the stone beneath her feet. The effect was immediate. The ground screamed. Not just rumbled, asterisk screamed. Asterisk like the planet itself was crying out. The spiral reversed. The glowing lines began to collapse inward, like veins pulling back under skin. The sky dimmed. And the construct in the pit roared. It tried to rise further, but the platform beneath it began to fall, crumbling into itself, dragged back by forces deeper than gravity. The AI shouted across the open comm, she's turning the lock back, she's sealing it. The commander reached her just as she collapsed. He caught her, pulled her close. Her hands were blistered, but she was breathing. The shard was gone, melted into the stone. The constructs froze mid-motion. Then one by one they collapsed, shattered like glass statues. The giant figure in the spiral gave one last roar, full of rage and fear, and then it fell. Back into the pit. And the spiral closed. The light was gone. The sky went quiet. The wind stopped. All that was left was the dust. They stayed there for minutes, maybe longer, trying to breathe again, trying to believe it was real. That it was over. Then the scientist stood. She looked around at the broken ruins, the silence, the dead stillness of everything around them. Was that really Earth protecting us? Or was it trying to protect everything else from us? The commander didn't answer right away. He looked at the engineer, unconscious but alive in his arms. She had made the choice none of them could. She made the difference, he said softly. She remembered what we forgot. The AI buzzed in again, weaker now, fading. The gate is sealed. But it won't last forever. Not if someone else finds it again. The memory, it always finds a way back. The scientist swallowed. Then what do we do now? The commander looked up at the sky. The satellites were still down. No contact. No way off-world. We make sure no one else ever comes here, he said. We bury the truth. Just like they did. Not because we're afraid. He looked down at the engineer's face. But because we finally understand it. And just as the dust began to settle, just as they thought the worst had passed, the AI whispered one last thing, softly, almost like it didn't want them to hear. There was another shard. They all froze. What? But the signal cut off. And high above them, hidden in the clouds where no one could see, something blinked. Not a satellite. Not a star. A signal. Waiting to be answered. The silence after the storm didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy like a held breath. They stayed there among the broken stone and dust for a long time, not speaking, not moving much, just listening to the quiet. It wasn't the kind of quiet you trusted. It was the kind that came right before something else. The engineer woke first. She blinked slowly, eyes adjusting to the dim light overhead. The sky had turned gray, but not in the natural way. It looked smeared like a canvas wiped clean in a hurry. Her voice cracked when she spoke. Did we close it? The commander nodded. You did. She looked at her hands. Burnt. Scarred. But still hers. I felt it fighting me. I know, he said and helped her sit up. The scientist was pacing now, quietly cataloging what was left. Most of the constructs had turned to dust or collapsed where they stood. The spiral, once lit up like a beacon, was just a scar in the ground. No hum. No glow. Just cracks and silence. But their work wasn't done. They spent the next days building a shelter using what remained of their drop pods and scavenged supply caches. Without working satellites or any signal to off-world stations, they were stranded. But they kept going, not because they had hope, but because they needed time to think, to understand what really happened. It was in those days of stillness that the memories started coming back. Not theirs. The AI had spoken about memory, about things buried. Now the engineer felt those echoes rising. Dreams, voices, faces that weren't hers. A flood of emotion that didn't belong in her chest. She shared it with the others. They felt it too. As if that thing in the pit, whatever it had been, left behind part of itself in all of them. The scientist theorized that it was a kind of psychic fingerprint, a defense system, maybe, or a message. But the engineer thought it was something deeper. A warning encoded not in machines but in people. Memory as a living virus. And it was spreading. They kept journals. They mapped the changes in their thoughts. Sometimes the commander would wake with tears on his face, not knowing why. Sometimes the scientist would speak in languages she didn't know, only realizing it after the words were gone. But none of them broke. They stayed grounded in each other. They talked. They remembered what it meant to be human, not just to survive but to carry stories, emotions, fear and strength all at once. The thing in the spiral had tried to rewrite them. But it hadn't counted on the one thing humanity always brought into the dark: stubbornness. Months passed. They built a transmitter from old relay parts. It was crude but it worked. Barely. A short-range pulse sent upward every few days, like a lighthouse in the dark. No one answered. Not at first. But then, on a cold morning when the sky had finally turned blue again, a voice broke through the static. It wasn't military. It wasn't a rescue team. It was a kid. Young, maybe 10 or 11. From a settlement near the edge of the belt. His voice was full of static but clear enough to hear the fear. Are you the ones from Earth? They looked at each other. The commander answered. Yes. The boy didn't pause. Then you need to know. They're coming back. Something woke up. Not just down there. Out here too. My parents said Earth should have stayed buried. But now we all feel it. He cut out before they could respond. They kept transmitting. No one else answered for a while. But the message had changed everything. The spiral wasn't the only one. Maybe it was the first. Maybe it wasn't. But it was clear now that Earth had been built like a lock. A prison. And humanity, with its drive to explore and rediscover, had just picked the lock. Still, there was something else under all the fear. The engineer talked about it the most. Not the danger but the possibility. What if this was supposed to happen? She said one night as they sat by a fire made of old tech scraps. Not the pain. Not the death. But the remembering. Maybe we were never supposed to stay safe. Maybe we were supposed to wake up. The commander wasn't sure. If we woke up something dangerous, then maybe we were the danger. She shook her head. We're not perfect. We break things. But we care. That's the difference. That's what the constructs didn't have. That's what that thing in the spiral couldn't feel. The scientist added, we don't run on programming. We run on choice. And in that simple truth they found something worth holding on to. They sent that message out. They told the story piece by piece over weeks. They spoke of the warning, the constructs, the spiral, the shard, the AI. They didn't dramatize it. They just told it straight. It spread. First to fringe colonies. Then to trade routes. Then to council channels. And with each retelling, It changed just a little, not because it was being twisted, but because people added their own pieces to it. Their own fears. Their own memories. It became something larger than the three who lived it. It became a reminder. Earth wasn't a home anymore. It was a question. One that each person had to answer for themselves. Some wanted to bury it again. Others wanted to study it. A few wanted to weaponize it. But none could ignore it. The trio stayed behind. Not forever, maybe, but for as long as they were needed. They built a perimeter. They built warnings. They trained those who came. Carefully. With honesty. They didn't call themselves protectors. They weren't guards. They were just people who remembered what forgetting had cost. Years passed. The engineer's hands never fully healed. But she used them anyway. She built tools. She wrote books. Her name became synonymous with the Earth Spiral event, though she never took credit for sealing it. She said she just followed her gut. The scientist returned to her research but did it differently now. She no longer trusted data alone. She asked more questions. She listened more. She started teaching others how to listen too. The commander eventually left Earth. Not to run but to speak. He traveled between colonies, warning them without fear, reminding them what it meant to face darkness and still choose light. He never asked for power. He only asked that people remember. And that became the legacy of Earth. Not a grave. Not a weapon. But a mirror. The place where humanity learned what they could become, and what they might awaken if they forgot who they were. The final twist came not with another attack or another disaster, but with a choice. A single council vote years later. They had discovered another spiral. Far from Earth. Not as large, but unmistakably connected. It had different symbols. Different energy. But the same pull. They asked the engineer what to do. She looked out the window of the station. Stared at the stars. We go, she said. But we go together, and we don't go to unlock it. We go to listen. So they did. And maybe, for the first time in history, they stepped into the unknown not out of hunger or fear or pride, but out of humility. That was the story. The one the AI didn't write. The one only humans could. The AI warned them. Never mess with Earth. They didn't listen. But maybe, just maybe, they learned.